Hello, it's Wednesday, and it is November 12th, and my name is Sharon, and I will be reading from the New Bedford Light. Our first story is by Kevin G. Andrade. Fall River Bishop exhorts the U.S. to stop dividing immigrant families. Bishop DeCunha, quote, "We say every country has a right to protect the border, but we are also saying that people who immigrate are human beings," end quote. The Bishop of Roman Catholic Diocese of Fall River is calling out the U.S. government for its aggressive immigration enforcement operations in recent months. Bishop Edgar Moreira DeCunha told The Light in an exclusive interview that the U.S. government's aggressive tactics are only creating chaos and will backfire. The United States is shooting themselves in the foot because they are doing harm to themselves by the things that they are doing, DeCunha said. Imagine those children who are born in this country and whose parents have been taken away from them. They're going to grow up with such a hatred and resentment from the trauma that they experienced, he continued, and we don't know what's going to happen to them and how they are going to turn out, end quote. As of September, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security held nearly 60,000 immigrants in detention. Of those, almost 72% have no criminal convictions greater than minor offenses such as traffic violations. The Light has confirmed that U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has detained about 60 immigrants in or from the greater New Bedford area since January 20th. If they want to deport the criminals, go right ahead, DeCunha said. You have all my support. But when they divide families and take parents away from children and leave children abandoned, that's not who we are, end quote. The pronouncements are the prelate's first on the topic since January 31, when he issued a public statement expressing concern for the rescission of a sensitive locations policy that prohibited ICE operations at clinics, courthouses, municipal offices, schools, and religious buildings. In it, he was measured in his tone. Churches are sacred places, long regarded as a safe refuge where anyone can go to seek God's comfort and strength, the statement read. It is my hope and prayer that the protection once afforded our churches and other special places is not ripped away in the current climate, end quote. Now that he's spoken out, some New Bedford advocates said they are hoping that he and other Catholic leaders say more. I absolutely think they should take a stand, said Helena De Silva Hughes, president of the Immigrants Assistance Center. There's such a huge role they should be playing on this issue. The people are getting picked up are their parishioners. DeCunha's words came shortly after Pope Leo XIV, the first ever U.S.-born leader of the worldwide Catholic Church, issued the first apostolic exhortation of his papacy, a reflection on the church and the poor. Leo appears to have placed the Catholic Church more firmly in opposition to the current mass deportation campaign. In the exhortation, Leo appeared to hearken to a 2017 comment by Pope Francis that interpreted as criticism of the first Trump administration's plans to build a wall at the southern border. The church, like a mother, accompanies those who are walking, Leo wrote. Where the world sees threats, she sees children. Where walls are built, she builds bridges, end quote. According to Thomas Groom, a Catholic theologian and professor of religious education at Boston College, the Pope quoted his pontifical predecessor about 150 times in the 80-page document. That, he said, signals an intention to continue in Francis's footsteps, if in Leo's own idiom. But not every Catholic leader supports that position. There are more traditional conservative bishops who have resisted that, Groom said. There will be bishops who will drag their butts and won't be enthusiastic. But he continued, Pope Leo does have a powerful tool to guide the church so it lines up with his vision. I think he'll continue to appoint bishops that are more in keeping with his agenda, end quote. Leo's exhortation wasn't just focused on the United States. He was speaking to a world with more than 123 million displaced persons. I think it would be a misreading of the document to say the Pope is writing directly to the President of the United States, says Hosman Ospino, a Catholic theologian and professor of theology at Boston College. The U.S. is not the only nation in the world that is confronting realities related to immigration, signaling opposition. Still, the Pope has recently spoken specifically about the current atmosphere around immigration enforcement in the U.S. On September 30th, Leo answered a question from the assembled press outside his Castel Gandolfo residence on maintaining philosophical coherence when it comes to the abortion debate. Someone who says I am against abortion, but I am in agreement with the inhuman treatment of immigration in the United States. I don't know if that's pro-life, he said. On October 8th, the Pope repeatedly told an audience of bishops from the U.S. that church leadership nationwide should firmly address the treatment of immigrants. He's keenly aware of our capacity as a government and as a country, Groom said. He has an American consciousness and is aware that we could be doing a lot more to help the poor. Espino said that xenophobia and anti-Catholicism have historically gone hand in hand in the U.S., targeting groups from Ireland, Italy, and Portugal, and other Catholic countries during previous immigration waves in the 19th and 20th centuries. For almost 2 centuries plus, Catholics in the United States of America have been forced to develop arguments that being Catholic and an immigrant is not an anathema to being an American, Ospino said. We have had Catholics throughout the centuries making a case for the just treatment of immigrants. The recent trend has put bishops in the U.S. on notice, according to some observers of the Catholic Church. It's not really an order, but more like a very strong suggestion, said Brian Fraga, a staff writer at the National Catholic Reporter. Pope Leo definitely thinks that church leaders have an obligation to forcefully speak out in defense of migrants. As a sitting Roman Catholic bishop, de Cunha would not be seen as exempt from the Pope's call to do that. Since de Cunha became Bishop of Fall River in 2014, making him the prelate of more than 250,000 Roman Catholics in Bristol County, part of Plymouth County, and the Cape and the Islands, he has spoken out in defense of immigrants. In 2023, when Florida Governor Ron DeSantis sent dozens of Venezuelan migrants to Martha's Vineyard, he told the Catholic News Service, Our Sunday Visitor, that the Diocese Catholic Charities branch responded with material aid for the migrants. De Cunha said Catholic Charities handles much of the diocese immigration work. Its immigration department provides legal services to immigrants such as Pascual Queen Gonzalez, whom ICE took into custody for a week before releasing him in Louisiana. A lawyer with Catholic Charities represented him in the successful asylum petition that preceded that. We have been very supportive of our people and our churches, de Cunha said. The prelate said church attendance dropped in the first few months of Trump's deportation operations. That is in line with national trends. Some religious organizations have reported drops in attendance as high as 40%. Nonetheless, de Cunha said people have been returning to the pews in recent weeks. The fear is still there, but it seems to have calmed down a little bit, he said. But the impacts have been felt in other ways. De Cunha himself, an immigrant from Bahia, Brazil, had planned to lead a delegation of Brazilian pilgrims to the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception in Washington, D.C. this November. They were to visit the oratory of Nossa Senhora Aparecida, a Marian apparition and patron saint of Brazil, enthroned at the shrine in September 24 during a mass attended by more than 6,000 Brazilian pilgrims. But on September 10th, de Cunha canceled the pilgrimage. Quote, after much reflection, dialogue, and prayer, we have come to the conclusion that, due to the current situation facing immigrants in this country, we are canceling our pilgrimage to Nossa Senhora Aparecida at the National Shrine planned for November 8, 2025. He wrote in an email in Portuguese to diocesan pilgrims. Hopefully for the improvement of the situation next year, we hope to then plan a new pilgrimage for the second anniversary of the enthronement of Nossa Senhora Aparecida. According to the bishop and theologians, Catholic doctrine allows that a nation-state has the right to defend its borders. It also holds that every person has a right to migrate, to sustain their lives and the lives of their families, and that nations should treat people with respect and dignity while administering immigration laws. Policies that impact those two things need to be fair and just and have consideration for the dignity of every person, DeCunha said. We say every country has a right to protect the border, but we are also saying that people who immigrate are human beings. They have rights, they have dignity, and they have to be treated as such. End quote. In recent months, some American leadership in the Catholic Church has taken up the Pope's call, according to Fraga, the National Catholic Reporter journalist. U.S. Catholic bishops as a whole have yet to find a collective strong voice on immigration, he said. With that said, we have seen a few examples of individual bishops being really outspoken and demonstrating leadership on the issue. He singled out Bishop Michael Pham of the Diocese of San Diego, who accompanied immigrants to immigration court hearings in June, and Bishop Joseph Tyson of the Diocese of Yakima in Washington, who used a homily to advocate for a parishioner in ICE custody in September. Those bishops might yet embolden the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops to find its prophetic voice on migration and the Trump administration's enforcement actions, he said. Fraga said the actions of those bishops and the Pope have angered conservatives in the Catholic Church in the U.S. It's hard to say how effective the Catholic Church can be in advocating on this issue, just because of how polarized lay Catholics in the pews are, he said. Catholics, for the most part, take their cues from their own personal political beliefs. DeCunha seemed conscious of that in his interview with The Light. I know this is a difficult situation because not everybody feels comfortable, and when you talk about things that feel uncomfortable, there are people who say, we talk about politics, DeCunha said. For some people, they interpret this as being involved in politics, but defending the rights of the poor and immigrants is the social justice teaching of the Church. Quote, I intend to continue defending them, but I intend to find a way to do it in a way that does not cause division, end quote. DeCunha added that he sees the government's current attitude toward immigrants as contrary to the U.S. foundational philosophy. It saddens me that our country, such a beautiful country with such potential and such a history of welcome, that we are not being what we always advocated and defended and promoted, he said. The most difficult part for me is when I see families divided and children suffering because of that. That's not who we are. Asked why he has been relatively quiet until now, DeCunha said the answer was simple. No one had asked him to speak. I have always spoken when people ask me to, he said. I'm not avoiding or hiding, but I'm not out with a megaphone on the street. But I do speak when I think it'll produce some positive. Our next article is by Kevin G. Andrade. Rhode Island Work Agency, Seafood Company, ex-manager face civil extortion suit. The lawsuit alleges that some workers at a New Bedford seafood processing plant were forced to pay $100 weekly to a plant manager as a condition of employment. Workers at a New Bedford seafood processing plant filed a civil class action lawsuit in U.S. District Court, Massachusetts, over allegations of extortion as a condition of employment. Lawyers for 5 employees filed this lawsuit against Mater Trawling Incorporated and Workforce Unlimited, Inc. on October 24th. In it, they accused the companies of a scheme where the employees paid a then-manager of the Mater plant, Francisco Ixtequiac Dionisio, $100 a week as condition of employment. In addition, the filings alleged that Mater and Workforce required employees residing in Rhode Island to take transportation to and from the plant and pay the companies an additional $60 weekly as a condition of employment. The lawsuit alleges the companies violated the Federal Fair Labor Standards Act, the Massachusetts Minimum Wage Law, Wage Act, and Temporary Worker Right to Know Act. Mater is among countless other companies that exploit the vulnerable community of immigrant workers with impunity, said Karen Salim, an attorney representing the workers, in a news release. This country cannot allow powerful companies to use and abuse workers as a business model. We encourage the federal and state governments to act to protect all members of our communities. The named plaintiffs include Maximiliano Diaz Perez, Lorenzo Suárez Penoy, Maria Lucrecia Sempo Gomez, Yoangli Michelle Garcia Mendez, and Mayli Adriana Velasquez Morales. Adriana Ventura, the executive director of the Centro Comunitario de Trabajadores, said the lawsuit was necessary to ensure companies are held just as accountable as workers for systematic abuses. Mater and Workforce have contributed to a system of exploitation against workers in our community, he said. It's time for these companies to be made responsible for what happens under their watch. Jason A. Dixon Acosta, Dokopiak Dionisio's attorney, denied the allegation. He denies the claims, he said. He looks forward to the truth coming to light through the legal process. In a statement responding to the lawsuit, Mater Trolling told the Light that ownership fired Extoyak Dionisio on May 27. It is Mater's understanding that court filings accuse the above individual with actions that, if proven, may amount to financial crimes that perpetuated upon his subordinates, Mater said. As we have regarding the earlier criminal accusations, Mater will cooperate with law enforcement regarding any alleged workplace financial crimes by this former employee, the statement said. Mater Trolling will respond to the lawsuit through the legal process, but our focus remains where it has always been, on the safety, dignity, and well-being of our people. End quote. Workforce Unlimited did not respond to a phone call requesting comment. Allegations. According to the filings, Extoyak Dionisio entered into an agreement with Workforce to pay the employees working between January 1, 2021 and May 27, 2025 at or near minimum wages. As a condition of their employment, according to the suit, he required employees to pay him $100 weekly as a supplement to his own salary. Approximately 80% of those working at the plant were hired and employed through Workforce, according to the lawsuit. Defendant Mater left it to the defendant Extoyak to supplement his salary from Mater as he saw fit, the suit says. Defendant Extoyak, acting within the scope of his employment with Mater, supplemented his salary by deducting from Mater, Plaintiff Diaz, and Mater's subclasses earned wages through direct cash payments. I will spell the last name of the defendant, as it is difficult for me to pronounce. Defendant Ixtotoyac. That is the defendant we are talking about. Quote, I just arrived from Guatemala, and I wasn't sure about the legality of the payments, said Mayli Velasquez, one of the named members of the class, in Spanish, but I paid it because I needed the work. The New Bedford resident said she began working at the plant in November 2023 and remains employed there. She said she continued paying the $100 fee to Extoyak Dionisio until the end of his employment in May. When we gave him the money, she said, he didn't even say thank you. I paid him $5,000, said a class member, an undocumented Guatemalan man from Providence, who asked not to be named due to fears around his status. I felt offended, but I felt I had to do it for the work. End quote. In addition to the kickbacks, according to the lawsuit, Extoyak Dionisio, a Rhode Island resident, owned a fleet of vans and required Rhode Island-based employees to use the transportation in their commutes. They were allegedly charged up to $60 a week. According to the lawsuit, that equaled more than 3% of the employees' pay, in violation of the Massachusetts Temporary Worker Right to Know Act. I felt offended, said the worker from Providence, who was obligated to use the provided transit. What else could I do? The suit claims that Mater and Workforce should have been aware of Extoyak Dionisio's activities. Mater benefited from the agreement because it was able to retain defendant Extoyak at a lower salary than the market permitted for a plant manager, the lawsuit alleges. Mater benefited from the agreement because through its agent, Ixtokayak, it was able to reduce its labor cost. Mater knew or should have known that Mater plaintiff Diaz and the Mater subclass were required to pay the extorted kickback deduction to Mater through its agent in exchange for keeping their jobs, the lawsuit alleges. According to the suit, the employees are looking to recoup their lost wages and their dignity. I decided to speak up because I could no longer stay quiet and be complicit, said Velasquez. I hope for justice and that we are returned what was robbed from us. Ixtokayak Dionisio is currently facing criminal charges in New Bedford District Court independent of the case. The charges included 5 counts of indecent assault and battery on a person 14 and over, 1 count of open and gross lewdness, and another of intimidation of a witness, juror, police officer, or official. The charges originally filed on June 23rd initially included 2 counts of rape, though the prosecutor declined to move forward on either of those charges. According to documents from New Bedford District Court, Ixtokayak Dionisio was released on July 2nd after putting $75,000 cash bail and surrendering his passport. He is currently on home confinement and is next expected in court on November 5th. Dixon Acosta, Ixtokayak Dionisio's attorney, declined to comment on those charges. Mater said they launched their own investigation in June upon learning of the criminal charges filed against Ixtokayak Dionisio. Upon learning of the criminal accusations against this former employee in completing our internal investigation, Mater Trawling took immediate steps to strengthen workplace safeguards, the company said, as part of our ongoing commitment to transparency and employee welfare. The company has engaged an independent, highly respected firm to conduct additional workplace training. Quote, we undertook compliance reviews and provided counseling services for employees, the statement continued. These actions reaffirm Mater Trawling's dedication to maintaining a professional, supportive, and lawful work environment for all team members, end quote. Next article by Kevin G. Andrade. Immigration lawyer. Passion isn't enough anymore. Eugene Galvez Sniffen typed phonetically as a Latin jazz track played in the background, the staccato of the keys adding to the controlled chaos in her office. As she reviewed the regular list of questions with a client, a phone call interrupted the conversation. Somebody that just got picked up today, she asked. Is he our client? He wasn't. The Guatemalan man's wife, who was Sniffen's client, reported his detention. There's nothing we can do for him, she said. If he has a removal order, he's not even going to go before a judge. The call was one of hundreds she has received since President Donald Trump launched a mass deportation campaign earlier this year that has nabbed almost 60 people in and from the greater New Bedford area. The Trump administration's myriad rapid-fire changes to immigration law and policy have led immigrants to inundate immigration attorneys with potential cases, leaving their lawyers struggling to keep up, according to several who spoke to The Light. In addition to the pressures on immigration judges, nationally to toe the administration's line in immigration, it has created a pressure cooker for lawyers and their clients that many feel trapped in. Sniffen hung up the phone and sighed before returning to the client before her. Quote, passion isn't enough anymore, end quote. More cases, fewer lawyers. The number of immigration lawyers in Massachusetts has always been low relative to the number of immigrants here. Massachusetts has more than 1.2 million foreign-born residents, according to the American Immigration Council, or slightly over 18% of the state's population. Though no complete database of immigration lawyers exists statewide, the Directory of the American Immigration Lawyers Association lists 113 in the Commonwealth. There's always been a shortage of immigration lawyers to meet the demand of the population that's out there, said Rajini Shah, a clinical professor of law at Suffolk University and faculty director of the Immigrant Justice Clinic. Quote, the difference right now is you're seeing a lot of people who would not have sought out legal help, end quote. At least 5 immigration attorneys have offices in New Bedford, a city where over 1/5 of residents are foreign-born. That's not enough to ensure all immigrants in the area have access to counsel nearby, according to advocates. There's never been enough pro bono attorneys, said Helena De Silva Hughes, president of the Immigrants Assistance Center. Now that immigration is a hot-button issue, they're overwhelmed. Some lawyers have stopped taking on cases with detained clients. That's because the Board of Immigration Appeals nearly eliminated bond hearings in 2 decisions this year, the matter of Q.Li and the matter of Yayure Hurtado. Among the lawyers refusing detainee cases is Deborah Gonzalez, an East Providence-based immigration attorney and director of the Roger Williams University Immigration Clinic in Bristol. It's a tremendous amount of work for a low chance of winning, she said. Another change is about to hit both attorneys and clients hard. In July, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services announced that, as a result of the One Big Beautiful Act, it would only be allowing payment for filing fees through bank transfers or credit cards, not checks or money orders, a policy set to go into effect on October 28th. Do you know how many clients have a bank account? Gonzalez said. A lot of this is punitive. Immigration attorneys in Rhode Island, whom many New Bedford residents hire for legal counsel, deal with the same pressures as those in Massachusetts, she said. Too few for too many people in need. In Rhode Island, the number of lawyers who do this work and know what they're doing, there are very few of us in the state, she said. All of us are overworked. There are only 7 immigration attorneys in Rhode Island listed in the AILA directory. According to the American Immigration Council, there were 160,000 immigrant residents in the state in 2023, almost 15% of the population. Lucy Pineda, founder and director of Latinos Unidos in Massachusetts, an Everett-based advocacy organization, said their communities have noticed their diminished chances in immigration court. In the majority of cases we've seen, it ends the same whether they have a lawyer or not, she said. If immigration wants to take them, they're going to take them. So why spend the money on a lawyer if they can't do anything? De Silva Hughes said that she still sees families looking for representation, but that the deluge of case lawyers are experiencing make a previously difficult task nearly impossible. People get frustrated and it's taking so long, she said. We've always had a challenge, but right now, with the waiting periods, it's just becoming harder and harder to find them. Sniffen said that the system seems rigged to her attorneys and clients. She said she's noticed a paradox of more people expressing interest in services, but are having to turn them away due to the numerous hurdles being thrown up by the administration. This is Sharon. I have been reading from the New Bedford Light on Wednesday, November 12th, and I hope you all have a good day.